Egypt's military strikes back in the form of airstrikes after attackers ambushed and killed hundreds of people at a mosque.
Clashes in Pakistan as police move to break up a 2-week-long protest in Islamabad will go live to the capital.
Plus, there is some confusion over who will be in charge of a U.S. consumer watchdog agency after the President of the United States and the outgoing director picked different successors. And Natalie, the question, who will run that agency come Monday morning? That's the big question.
Yeah, we'll have more about that in a moment. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and all around the world. We're live in Atlanta. I'm Natalie Allen.
And I'm George Howell. 5 a.m. here on the U.S. East Coast at CNN World Headquarters. Newsroom starts right now.
And we begin in Egypt. The Egyptian Air Force says it found and destroyed vehicles involved in Friday's terror attack in northern Sinai, killing at least some of the terrorists thought to be responsible.
They carried out the brutal, well-planned attack at a Sufi mosque, detonating explosives to draw people out and then opening fire as they all ran out. Even ambushing ambulances that showed up to help. By the end, at least 235 people were killed, making this the deadliest terror attack in Egypt's history. CNN's Ian Lee following the story and joins us live. Ian, officials say the Air Force struck several vehicles carrying militants. What more can you tell us about it?
Yeah, this decision was made to mobilize the military to hunt down these culprits by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. He made that decision after an emergency meeting of his security cabinet. The military, we know the soldiers as well as the Air Force are combing the desert looking for the people. And then the military last night said that they were able to find some of the trucks that were used, they say, in this attack. You know, no one has claimed responsibility, but it does appear that this attack was carried out by ISIS. It bears all the hallmarks, George.
Ian, you have covered situations relative to this in the region for many years. I want to get a sense from you. Does this undermine the president's credibility, his ability to crack down on these militants, or does this put more pressure on him to do more?
Well, it definitely embarrasses the president to some extent because he came to office, he came into power on the platform of stability and security. And that's something he's been pledging throughout almost 4 years in office now. And still, we see these massive attacks. This isn't the first time that militants have carried out a mass casualty attack in Egypt. Last April, dozens of Christians were killed when two churches were attacked simultaneously. And every time we see the president, we see the military come out and say, next time we're going to go harder, we're going to hunt these people down, we're going to put a stop to this. And George, we still see attacks like this, you know, with ISIS losing ground in Syria and Iraq. Egyptian officials have also expressed concern that those militants might try to find other places to go, Egypt being one of them. So this is a very difficult task for the Egyptian president. The president has also been criticized by people saying that it's not just going to take bullets and bombs to defeat ISIS. They have to go after the root cause of it. A lot of people in the northern part of Sinai feel marginalized by the central government in Cairo. And so the government is going to have to not only go after militants, but go after the causes, the reasons why people are attracted to these organizations.
Yeah, we've seen Coptic Christians attacked before, now Sufi attacked during worship. We'll stay in touch with you. Thanks for the reporting today.
For several years, the Sinai region in Egypt has been a flashpoint for violence, with Islamist groups waging an insurgency that the government, as we just heard from Ian, has not been able to quell. In July, at least 23 soldiers were killed in car bomb attacks targeting Egyptian soldiers at a military checkpoint in the Sinai Peninsula. And in January, 7 Egyptian police, 1 civilian, were killed in a bomb attack at another checkpoint in the city of Al Arish. In October 2016, armed terrorists attacked a security checkpoint using 4-wheel drive vehicles. That happened in the city of Bir al-Abid. A dozen military personnel were killed. So let's talk more about this threat. Fawaz Gerges chairs the Department of Contemporary Middle East Studies at the London School of Economics. He joins me now. Fawaz, thank you for being with us. First of all, Why is the Sinai Peninsula such a hotbed of militant violence?
I think you have an insurgency that has been raging for more than a decade, even though the insurgency has escalated qualitatively and dramatically since 2013. We keep talking about ISIS, we keep talking about Al-Qaeda, but there are social roots behind this particular insurgency. You have Bedouins, tribal Bedouins who inhabit northern Sinai. They feel excluded. They feel that the major resources of tourism are not invested in their area. They feel discriminated against. Long before President Assisi came to power in 2013, the insurgency raged for the past 15 years. The local populations feel disconnected from the central government of Cairo. And what we have since 2013, basically this insurgency now has become more militarized and radicalized because it has bought into this ideology and tactics of ISIS, because the rise of ISIS in 2013, 2014 in Iraq and Syria has resonated throughout the region, and the insurgency in Sinai is no longer really basically about local goals. Now it's about the ideology and tactics of global Salafi jihadism, and that's why it's very difficult and it's very complex.
Right, and the government has this issue before it, and as we just heard from our reporter Ian Lee in the region there, that the president is embarrassed when this keeps happening because he came into office pledging security and safety. Why can't the government get ahead of this threat?
I mean, just to give you an idea, Natalie, what we're talking about. We're talking about more than 1,000 operator in the Sinai province, or Wilayat Sinai, that has taken on the ideology and tactics of ISIS in 2014. It pledged allegiance to the so-called Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. 1,000 operatives, highly skilled, fanatical, determined. They have the will to kill, and they have basically been carrying out strategic attacks not only in northern Sinai. Remember the downing of the Russian plane over the Sinai in 2015. Major attacks, as you have just said, on the Coptic Christians in Alexandria, in Cairo, on the security forces in Sinai and other places. My take on it is that no government in the world can protect every civilian place, neither the American government nor the British government where I am, because when you have a major potent insurgency, people willing to kill. I mean, the mosque that was attacked yesterday was in a very small, tiny place called Al-Rawda. It's about 30 or 40 kilometers away from the capital of northern Sinai, Al-Arish. And you can imagine that it would have been very difficult to protect every mosque and every church in Egypt. But the reality is this insurgency is very potent, is very deadly, because it's deeply entrenched now in some parts of northern Sinai, and the strategy is you have to basically dislodge the insurgency. You have to find out why Egyptians in northern Sinai have joined this particular insurgency. You cannot just throw military might at it, because regardless of how much military might you throw at it, in fact, you might bring about counterproductive effects by alienating the local population. So the strategy of Egypt not only has to focus on the military aspect, you have to focus on the social, economic and political drivers that have powered this insurgency, in particular since 2013.
Exactly. That seems to make much more sense than exacting revenge. And that's what we hear again and again from Assisi when these things happen.
Well, I mean, you can imagine the predicament of President Assisi. This particular attack and the many attacks in Egypt over the last 3 years are determined to undermine his presidency, to embarrass President Sisi, to basically nail a major problem in his presidency. Remember, there are presidential elections coming up in the next few months. So the idea of these attacks to show Egyptians that President Assisi cannot protect his people, cannot protect minorities like Coptic Christians, and now cannot protect worshippers, even though they are Sufis. They belong to a Sufi strand of Islam. The reality is you have a very complex insurgency. In fact, we have multiple counterinsurgency. We're talking about ISIS, the so-called Wilayat Sinai ISIS, in the northern Sinai. But you have also Al-Qaeda branch. You have also freelancers. It tells you how complex the situation, and the defeat of ISIS in Iraq and Syria is not going to bring about the end of the terrorist attacks, in particular in Egypt, because Egypt has one of the most potent ISIS affiliates outside of Iraq and Syria and Libya.
We thank you, as always, for joining us. Fawaz Georges. Thanks, Fawaz.
Thank you.
Here in the United States, President Donald Trump is on a working vacation this holiday weekend. He addressed troops overseas by way of satellite link. He visited a Coast Guard station and talked to a number of world leaders.
Among the topics front and center for the Commander-in-Chief, terrorism, taxes, immigration, and something else you could say is par for the course. Here's CNN's Jeff Zelny.
Mr. President! President Trump hitting the links today with two of the biggest names in golf, Tiger Woods and Dustin Johnson. The White House rarely confirms when the president is golfing, but he made the announcement himself on Twitter, saying he would be heading over to Trump National Golf Club, Jupiter, to play golf quickly. He departed after more than 4 hours at the course. His visit marking the 80th day he spent at one of his golf properties since taking office, and his 100th day at a Trump-branded property. Many Americans and more than a few presidents play golf. It's only notable because of what Mr. Trump repeatedly said before winning the presidency.
If I win, I may never see my property. I may never see these pieces again because I'm going to be working for you. I'm not going to have time to go play golf, and believe me.
The president also talking by phone today with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan about the conflict in Syria. The Turkish foreign minister said Mr. Trump pledged to stop arming a Kurdish militia, the YPG, that the government considers a terrorist organization. The president also condemning the attack today in Egypt, killing more than 230 people and wounding more than 100 others in the deadliest terror strike on Egyptian soil. He called the president of Egypt to discuss the attack, which he also seized upon to push his immigration agenda, tweeting, "We have to get tougher and smarter than ever before, and we will. Need the wall, need the ban. God bless the people of Egypt." The president is also turning his attention to the tax plan up for a vote next week in the Senate. He offered a preview during a Thanksgiving Day call from Mar-a-Lago with American service members around the world.
Now we're working on tax cuts, big, fat, beautiful tax cuts. And hopefully we'll get that, and then you're going to really see things happen.
The president is set to meet with congressional leaders at the White House and attend a weekly lunch of Senate Republicans on Tuesday. The Senate Republicans still don't have the votes to pass the sweeping tax overhaul amid concerns of the bill's effect on the deficit.
Congress is talking about tax cuts that will add trillions to our national debt and hurt our economy.
Senator Ron Johnson has announced his opposition, with Senators Susan Collins, Bob Corker, Jeff Flake, and Lisa Murkowski all voicing concerns. Senator Rand Paul will likely support the plan, with Senator John McCain as a wild card. As America marked Black Friday, the president's campaign joined in on the annual day after Thanksgiving shopping rush, with Trump merchandise marked down 30%.
In the president's phone call with Egyptian President El-Sisi on the heels of his call with Turkish President Erdogan, talking about terror in Syria, both on the heels of a call earlier this week with Russian President Vladimir Putin also about Syria. This working vacation for the president continues throughout the weekend. He heads back to Washington on Sunday. Jeff Zeleny, CNN, West Palm Beach, Florida.
Jeff, thank you. There's another story we're following about confusion over who will lead the Federal Consumer Watchdog Agency here in the United States. Richard Cordray stepped down as the director of Consumer Financial Protection Bureau effective midnight on Friday. In his letter to President Trump, he named his deputy director as acting director, but the president had other ideas. He named Budget Director Mick Mulvaney to the post until a permanent director is confirmed. As a congressman, Mulvaney had voted to do away with that agency. So the question now is, who will run this agency come Monday morning? Let's now bring in Leslie Benjamin-Murray. She is an associate professor of international relations at the University of London and live in our London bureau this hour. It's good to have you with us, Leslie. This is a very curious situation, what's happening with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This tweet from Elizabeth Warren sums it up, the conflict that we're seeing. She says, if there is a CFPB director vacancy, the deputy director becomes acting director. Donald Trump can't override that. Your thoughts here?
That's right. I mean, under Dodd-Frank, the acting director does become the director. But of course, President Trump has opposed part of his agenda, of course, is to deregulate. So putting his person in place over the Consumer Financial Regulation Bureau, I think, is very important to him. And he does have he has the authority, of course, to appoint a new director in due course. But that person will have to be confirmed. So at this point, I think there's a real tussle in terms of who's actually going to be in control on Monday morning. Of course, the Mick Mulvaney can continue to do his current job as budget director and run the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. But that is not what's supposed to happen if you follow the tenets of Dodd-Frank.
All right, another story we've been looking into, there's been a great deal of skepticism over the president's latest tweet regarding Time Magazine. Time Magazine called to say, he said that I was probably going to be named Man Person of the Year like last year, but I would have to agree to an interview and a major photo shoot. I said probably is no good and took a pass, thanks anyway, said President Trump. And then the magazine responded, the president is incorrect on how we choose Person of the Year. Time doesn't comment on our choice until publication, which is December 6th. That's from Time Magazine. But this whole back and forth, in some are even questioning whether it even happened, Leslie.
That's right. It's been one of those stories that each time you read a tweet from the president, you think it can't get any more surreal than it has in the past. But it did certainly with this Time Magazine story. It just seems to be more of what we've seen, I think, unfortunately, in many weekends, many holiday weekends, where the president is looking for a little bit of attention and wants to perhaps distract from the fact that he's not once again going to be Time's Man of the Year.
All right, another story we're following, Mr. Trump's daughter Ivanka and the Global Entrepreneur Summit that she'll be leading in India. But the State Department decided not to send high-level delegates to this summit. What does this say about the relationship between the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, and Ivanka Trump, especially with regards, quite frankly, to who is the face of U.S. foreign policy?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a quite important summit. In the past, Secretary John Kerry has attended the summit. It's focusing this year on women entrepreneurs, and Ivanka Trump is going. Normally, you would expect a fairly senior team from the State Department to back her up, but of course, there's this ongoing conflict between Rex Tillerson and what he sees to be his proper role as the Secretary of State. One who's not doing very well in terms of the fallout within his own agency, of course, within his own State Department. And his sense that, Ivanka Trump is not really supposed to be the representative of U.S. foreign policy. Nonetheless, she was invited by the Prime Minister of India and is going in, to represent the United States. So it's not good for the United States to turn up to a major and a very important summit with the lens on very clearly discontent and disagreement about who will support her and who's really the voice of U.S. foreign policy. So overall, it's another sign of disarray that's taking place right now in the U.S. foreign policy appointments that have been made, and who's really in charge: the White House, Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, or Rex Tillerson.
A lot of uncertainty there. Leslie
uncertainty.
Thank you so much for your perspective today.
Thank you.
Coming up here, there are talks of a final peace in Syria, but the violence has not let up. We'll tell you how one town is still suffering at the hands of the Assad regime.
Plus, Argentina holds out hope in the search for its missing submarine, why one official says it can still be found. CNN Newsroom live from Atlanta, Georgia, simulcast on CNN US here in the States. Welcome back to Newsroom. President Trump made a big promise to Turkey's president on Friday in the ongoing war in Syria.
According to Turkey's foreign minister, Mr. Trump said the U.S. would immediately stop arming the YPG. That's the Kurdish militia fighting ISIS alongside U.S.-backed Syrian rebels. Back in May, President Trump approved a plan to supply weapons to the YPG.
The White House says there are no impending plans to stop selling arms. Turkey has long condemned the YPG, which it considers a terrorist group.
For more than 5 years, the conflict in Syria has shocked and appalled the world. This week, the talk among the leaders of Russia, Turkey, and Iran was of finding a peaceful settlement.
But as our Nick Payton-Walsh reports, some parts of that war-ravaged country are still not seeing any signs of any peace.
You may have thought this was over, but it is not. You may have heard Russia, Iran and Turkey talking about their peace plans. Besieged eastern Ghouta, near the capital, where hunger is so profound it's reportedly led to suicide, meals of trash. A ceasefire elsewhere means bombs here. Relentless over 10 days, a reported 100 dead. The mortars continuing Friday. Even the headlong dash to the rescue is deadly itself. You may have heard of starve and surrender, a favourite regime tactic to deprive their opponents of the strength to fight on. The bombs that came with it took the lives of their children here. ISIS may be done, but the savagery is not. Neither is the hatred or the need for vengeance. Nearly 200,000 are besieged here. So short of food, a single lemon has its price written on it. Imagine dealing with nightmares when awake, but also with insane hunger. Here, sugar is $40 a kilo, and a single egg $1.20. This week, Russia, Iran and Turkey declared a conference to settle the post-ISIS peace in Syria. And the day before, Assad let the world know how grateful to Moscow he is, perhaps unwittingly, with this hug. Ghouta's torture went unseen there, but its pain may mute the victory cries you'll hear in Moscow and Damascus. Nick Payton-Walsh, CNN, London.
It is just surreal how much these people have endured.
Nick
They're still
Payton-Walsh
enduring.
giving us an understanding of what's happening with people. Thank you, Nick, for the reporting. Moving on now to Argentina, the nation saying that it is not giving up hope in the search for a missing submarine. This despite news of a possible explosion near the ship's last known location. The ARA San Juan vanished more than a week ago with 44 crew members on board.
Teams from around the world have searched for the ship, but many now fear the worst. Here's why a Navy official says there is still hope, though, for a rescue.
The weather, thank God, is favorable in that search area for scanning and mapping the seabed, hoping for the rapid detection and location of the San Juan submarine.
Well, the submarine has been missing for over a week now, and that's about the time that they may run out of oxygen. Fingers still crossed.
Yeah.
Outrage is growing after CNN uncovered a horrific modern-day slave market. Yes, you heard right. As you may recall, our reporting revealed migrants being sold as property in Libya.
The UN's High Commissioner for Human Rights said on Friday that people of African descent are frequently denied their rights. His words come as people in Paris have taken to the streets, people demanding action. CNN's Melissa Bell has more from the French capital.
For the second time in a week, protesters gathered in Paris to express their anger and to call for an end to slavery. The trigger? CNN's exclusive reporting on Libya's slave markets.
We talk about the weight of words and the shock of images. People were able to see for themselves.
This is what people were able to see. Dozens of men in Libya being sold at auction, many for as little as $400. President Emmanuel Macron wants the UN to act.
It's a crime against humanity. It is one of the forms of trafficking that is the most profitable today, and that leads to the most serious crimes, and that feeds in part the terrorist networks.
The French president was joined this week in Paris by the head of the African Union. He too wants more than words.
We are in a situation where human beings are threatened. Imagine you find yourself in a state where human beings are sold in a souk to the highest bidder. This is abominable, and no conscience can accept it. We have to act, and we have to act now.
Il s'agit là d'une urgence absolue.
That sense of outrage has also been expressed this week in France's National Assembly. The MP, Max Mathiassin, the great-great-grandson of a slave, received a standing ovation when he delivered a passionate plea to Parliament to act.
Moi, le descendant d'esclaves.
And it was the viral Facebook post of another descendant of Guadeloupean slaves, the journalist Claudie Siard, that led to last Saturday's protest in Paris. But he believes that the consequences may be felt elsewhere.
This has to serve as a wake-up call to African leaders. And I think that with regard to the pictures, there will be a before and an after. And it's not impossible to imagine that some political systems, that some governments in Africa may wobble and even fall in the coming months, because there has been an awakening and there is a desire for revolution today.
The numbers at this latest protest are down on what they were last week, but the anger of those here is undiminished, and the organizers say that they will continue holding these protests so that the momentum is not lost. Melissa Bell, CNN in Paris.
Melissa, thank you. Still ahead here on Newsroom, violent clashes between protesters and police in Pakistan have been happening. We have a live report from Islamabad on that ahead.
Also, Zimbabwe's new president promises to lift the country out of poverty, stamp out corruption. Will he do it? We'll have more on Zimbabwe's transfer of power when we come back.
Welcome back to our viewers here in the United States and all around the world. You're watching CNN Newsroom, and it's good to have you with us. I'm George Howell.
I'm Natalie Allen. Here are the headlines this hour. The Egyptian Air Force says it has killed at least some of the terrorists it believes behind Friday's attack on a Sufi mosque in northern Sinai. Warplanes hit outposts and vehicles carrying militants thought to be responsible for killing at least 235 people on Friday.
The U.S. President Donald Trump took to Twitter on Friday, saying Time magazine called to say I was probably going to be named Man of the Year like last year. I said probably is no good and took a pass. Thanks anyway. Time magazine later responded, the president doesn't understand the process and there is skepticism as to whether it even happened.
The UN Refugee Agency is voicing concern about a new deal between Myanmar and Bangladesh to repatriate Rohingya refugees. The agreement was signed Thursday, but there are still no official details about how the process will work. The UN group says Bangladesh should not send any Rohingya back to Myanmar unless their passage is safe and basic rights are guaranteed.
All right, we're following some new and important developments out of Pakistan. Police there say 100 people have been arrested. Nearly 100 police and others have been injured at an Islamabad protest. Let's go live to CNN's Sophia Saifi in the Pakistani capital. Sophia, what more can you tell us about the root of these protests?
Well, George, the root has to do with blasphemy. These protesters are actually accusing the government of having committed blasphemy, and it all goes back to last month in October when there was, according to the protesters, a change in the electoral laws with regards to an oath made by lawmakers about the finality of the Prophet Muhammad as the last prophet of God. Now, this is something very controversial because it has to do with, religion and blasphemy. The government has denied it, but the protesters themselves have asked for the law minister to resign, for the law minister to be laid off, and that has not been done. So there was a constant kind of stalemate in the capital for the past 2 months, a complete shutdown of traffic, economic losses, and that has now erupted after last night's deadline with a complete clash between police and protesters this morning in Islamabad. George?
All right, Sophia, and we're looking at these images of what's been happening there in Islamabad. What more can you tell us, though, about the fact that Pakistani TV stations, many of the private stations, have been taken off the air?
Yes, this is a development that's only happened about an hour and a half ago. So there was a lot of, there were a lot of images being broadcast across the country, and the Pakistani Electronic Media Regulatory Authority sent out a notice calling all cable news channels to resist and sensitively report on the matter that's happening between the cities of Rawalpindi and Islamabad. According to some people in the government that I've spoken to, this was causing more protesters to come out. We're hearing of reports that, there are protesters in Karachi, Lahore and Islamabad, which are the three major cities of the country. But the fact that there's been a major media blackout like this is something unusual. It hasn't happened in at least a decade, when former President Musharraf called for an emergency in the country and there was a similar blackout. So there's a lot of rumors, there's a lot of unease and a lot of unknowingness of what's going to happen in the hours to come.
CNN producer Sophia Saifi live for us in Islamabad. We'll stay in touch with you as developments continue out of the region. Thank you.
In Zimbabwe, people hope for big changes from their new president, Emmerson Mnangagwa. He was sworn in Friday following Robert Mugabe's resignation this week.
A Catholic priest mediated the talks that led to the transition of power. He spoke exclusively to our David McKenzie about this historic process.
With each passing day, the calls grew louder. The pressure on Mugabe mounted.
When you have two bulls wanting to fight, you have to know how to tame both.
And this priest persisted.
Did I feel the pressure? I'm a tough nut.
As the mediator between Mugabe and the military, it was up to Father Mukanori to make sure the guns on the streets stayed silent. And the only sounds that the former president heard were the cries of his people and the reasoned voice of a longtime confidant.
What did those crowds mean to former President Mugabe? What did he say?
You saw that they spoke.
And he listened to them?
What are the results? You see the results. That's a sign that he listened.
Did it break him?
It moved him. It moved him in this sense that he realized they are speaking to say, this is enough.
The negotiations were long.
Sometimes in a day we would go to 3 different places.
But they were always civil.
It was not a fight. It was a discussion.
The generals even saluting the man they looked to overthrow.
In a few weeks from now,
it was during this address that the world thought Mugabe was ready to go. The resignation letter was already drafted, but before sending, Mugabe asked for just a few more weeks.
Listening of a 93-year-old is not the same as listening of a 25-year-old.
Eventually, says the priest, the cries were heard, and a new president of Zimbabwe took the stage. Stripped of his office, Mugabe still wishes there was a more systematic transfer of power, says Father Mukanori.
He said he is available to Emmerson. He is available. He is at his disposal. He does not vanish from life, he's not dead, but he is vanished from limelight.
A man who ruled with an iron fist, perhaps not willing to completely let go. David McKenzie, CNN, Harare.
We're joined now by Washington Times correspondent Jeff Hill to discuss this historic change in Zimbabwe's leadership. Jeff, thanks for talking with us. First of all, the euphoria that we just saw in that story from the people of Zimbabwe, such a beautiful thing to see. But now it's up to Mnangagwa to come through for them. Do you think he can and he will?
Yes, I do. And perhaps I'm putting naive confidence in Emmerson, who I have met several times and spoken with many times. Emmerson is a pragmatist, whereas Mugabe was more a philosopher, sometimes a very violent and bad philosopher. Emmerson understands what needs to be done to get this country back on track. Words are not going to do it. He will have to show very quickly and very clearly that this is a change before Western countries re-engage financially.
Well, that's encouraging that you've met him and feel good about his taking over the country. He struck a very inclusive tone in his remarks to the country. What stood out for you?
The fact that he said that the past was the past and he didn't want any retribution, that he wanted to go forward inclusively. This was so important, not just in terms of white and black. Remember, at the height of Rhodesia in the 1970s, there were only 320,000 whites. There are now 12 million black people, 4 million of them living in exile. And Zimbabwe has a number of tribes. The Shona tribe, the Shonas, Mnangagwa's own Shona people, have a number of clans. It is bringing all those people together that will be so important because many have been marginalized during the Mugabe rule.
Right. 90% unemployment in Zimbabwe. Is job one the economy, and where does he start?
This is so critical. You've hit it there. Not just 90% unemployment, but Mugabe, a former school teacher, insisted that all schools do algebra and Shakespeare. You have the most literate and well-educated country in Africa. And of course, you can't expect kids who have done that education to go and keep goats or grow pumpkins. They want real jobs. They want real jobs in the city. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and they insist on their voices being heard. And the first voice, the loudest voice, is we want jobs.
Well, hopefully he can start to create that. He certainly reached out to the world saying we're open for business. One journalist, though, Jeff, we spoke with recently, said she was a tad disappointed he didn't account for his role in the past when he spoke, working alongside Mugabe, who put the country in this downward spiral. Should he have addressed that?
Very difficult because, of course, he was involved in the genocide of the 1980s against the Matabele people in the south of Zimbabwe. This would have him in The Hague, essentially. So he has to be very careful. But you remember that when Gorbachev came to power, and he'd been a Soviet strongman, so had Boris Yeltsin, neither of them said sorry for the past. They simply changed the future.
Jeff Hill with the Washington Times. Thanks so much for joining us.
Still ahead here on Newsroom, the biggest shopping day of the year in the United States. Consumers fought crowds and long lines to be part of it, and the retailers fought the competition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Newsroom. So, you know, Thanksgiving, you have the turkey, you have everyone together. It's a big thing.
Pig out, yep.
And then some people jump into Black Friday. This is the biggest shopping event of the year. Retailers, they offer steep discounts to entice shoppers to spend big money to kick off the holiday season. And this year, U.S. shoppers were expected to spend more than ever.
But brick-and-mortar stores have seen a troubling trend over the past 2 decades as more customers move to online shopping. And 2017 has been particularly brutal for retailers. Nearly 7,000 stores in the United States have closed. Amazon is reaching out beyond its online borders. The internet retailer opened up a pop-up store, a physical store in London for Black Friday.
But that may seem a little counterintuitive for Amazon, which makes most of its money, big money online. Samuel Burke went there to see what it's up to.
There is a major shift happening right now. 59% of Americans say that they plan to shop online this year. That's the first time that we've seen more people planning to do this in the digital world than the physical world. Even though we hear so much about brick and mortar stores closing up because they can't compete with Amazon, that very same company is actually opening up more and more spaces in the physical world, including an Amazon pop-up shop. So, Paul, it's Amazon's home of Black Friday, and this is the kitchen.
That's right.
But the real question for you guys is Amazon was always supposed to be a digital space. That's what made you more efficient. You didn't have to pay for a brick and mortar shop. So why a place like this kitchen for Black Friday?
Well, we've always tried to experiment at Amazon. We did that when we first brought Black Friday to the UK back in 2010. That year we just had 300 deals just on Black Friday.
Why spend all the time creating this beautiful kitchen when you guys own Whole Foods now? There's a Whole Foods right down the street here in London where you could be doing all this. Isn't that why you guys bought Whole Foods?
Because we're selling to people in their homes, and we want people to see how this product will work in their homes. And what we've done here is try to create what a home might look like.
It is interesting because you see the tentacles of Amazon expand. You've got Amazon lockers by my work. You have this pop-up shop. And it does make some people wonder, where will it stop? I mean, is Amazon's goal to be in all parts of our lives, literally from the living room to next door to our work?
I think Amazon's goal is to make things easier for our customers. And if that means by putting a delivery locker in near your work, it's easier for you to get your parcel. If by putting a place like this together so that people can understand how products work easier, then that's what we'll do. It's all about focusing on what makes it easier for our customers.
As long as they sign up for Prime. So who are going to be the big winners here? When you speak to experts, they say it will be the places that have a foothold in both the digital and the physical world, like Amazon is doing the way Walmart is with its acquisition of Jet.com. left in the dust could be people like Target and Costco, which just haven't been able to build out their digital spaces as well.
All right, Samuel Burke, thank you. Now, for those who chose to shop online at home for Black Friday, they can thank Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder and CEO. But really, he should thank them, because Bloomberg says that Bezos' net worth now just peaked at $100 billion.
Billion. Bezos' stake in Amazon rose by $2.4 billion after Amazon shares rose Friday on hopes for online sales. That's like, I mean, he just made $2.4 billion, and that pushed Bezos even further into the top bracket of the world's richest people. So, rock on, I guess.
Rock on, man. Still ahead here on Newsroom, parts of the northwestern part of the United States are underwater. This after a Thanksgiving holiday storm. Our meteorologist Ivan Cabrera has more on what's happening in the Pacific Northwest.
Mr. Ivan Cabrera has joined us, and both Ivan and George have lived in the lovely, sunny Pacific Northwest, but they've been really getting some rain.
Sunny between July and August. The rest of the year, they have a little more time with the sunshine, but yeah, it's been
bad. Yeah,
it's been pouring there, and of course they're used to the rainfall this time of year. By the way, one of our viewers reminded me, Seattle Marathon on Sunday.
Maybe they'll get what they call those sun breaks.
I don't think so, George. I think it's going to rain the whole time.
How do you run a marathon with the streets flooded?
They do it this time of year. So we're talking more rain on the way. It's not going to be like what we're going to show you here, which is, of course, the flooding rain that has been impacting north of Seattle. It's about 60 miles to the north there, with plenty of rainfall in the last 24 to 48 hours. And we got this Pineapple Express situation going on, and that is going to be bringing us some more rain. And we call it that because the moisture, it comes from all the way into Hawaii. You can see that plume crossing the Pacific, now going into California, blocking high here, so all the moisture is concentrated and heading up into Seattle and Portland, although most of the rainfall has been falling across Washington State. We'll fly in there and show you on the latest radar perspective. Still seeing those breaks of showers, a little bit of a lull the last few days, or the last couple of hours, I should say, but there come the clouds, and the steadier, heavier rainfall is going to be on the way, so flood watches continue in effect. In fact, at last 24 to 48 hours. In just 2 days, they picked up upwards of 7 inches of rainfall. That is a lot of rainfall. In fact, we're in some cases over 2 to 3 inches above where we should be throughout the month of November. So that's something there, and more on the way. And that is why the flood watches continue. Where you see the brighter greens, that's where we have those rivers, and one in particular has overflowed. In fact, major flood stage last few days, and now it's gone below minor. So that is good news there. The water receding. That is the Skagit River there, just to the north of Seattle. There comes more rain, not what we want to see. And by the way, that does include California, and the Sierra Nevada will be picking up significant snowfall, and then heading up into the Cascades as well. Olympic Mountain will be seeing some snowfall. Very cold there because of the high elevation, but take a look at the record highs. 51. You imagine that? Black Friday. A lot of folks were out enjoying temperatures that we typically see late summer, not November and almost December here. We had temps in the 70s and 80s. By the way, that continues as far as the heat. Suppressed a little bit further to the south. I don't think we're going to see 50 record highs today, but it's still going to be above average for this time of year. So enjoy that. The heavy rain continues north and west, and everybody heading back home on Sunday. And this is what you have to expect for today, with temperatures nice and mild. But we do have that storm system. So if you're traveling through the Pacific Northwest, as we take you back home, I think we're okay. We've been worse before, and just looking at that rain and snow north and west. Otherwise, the rest of us clear sailing, driving or flying.
All right, Ivan, thank you. Okay. Thanks for being with us. For CNN Newsroom, I'm George Howell.
I'm Natalie Allen. For our viewers in the U.S., New Day is next. For international viewers, you'll see I'm on board. Thanks for watching CNN.